Good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to this webinar organized by Metropolitan College of Greece, entitled The Future of Education. My name is Adonis Mukhtaropoulos. I'm the Dean of Digital Learning and Educational Technology here at Metropolitan College, and I'll be your host for this session. It's a great privilege to be able to share this afternoon with you, and I'm delighted to welcome you to our very exciting panel and event tonight. As we all know, technology is advancing at an unparalleled rate, and its impact on education is undeniable. The way we learn, the way we teach is changing, and it is important to stay informed and understand the potential benefits and challenges of digital education. Today's webinar will explore the latest trends and innovations in digital learning, how they're being implemented in different settings around the world. We will hear from experts in the field who will share their insights and real-world examples of how technology is being used to enhance teaching and learning. The idea behind today's event, in the International Day of Education as it is to set up a discussion forum for everyone, but also to let you hear from the experts and practitioners in the field across a wide range of expertise and areas of confidence in digital education. As you will see in today's schedule and event, today's event includes 4 talks from 5 speakers around the globe in a wide variety of topics in digital education. The event is being recorded and it will be available on our YouTube channel. So also please feel free to send your questions in the chat on our YouTube channel on your right-hand side as we speak, there will be a Q&A session after each talk tonight. Thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to a stimulating discussion on how digital learning is transforming both the physical and the digital classroom. At this point, I'd like to give the floor to our Vice Principal of Academic Affairs, Dr. Triant Floris, for a short introduction to our event tonight. Triant, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this, and I would like to share and echo the word exciting that Adonis used in describing what this event is going to be like for the next hour or so. And it's going to be exciting because of 2 different reasons. One is the theme in terms of digital learning and the way that digital learning is transforming teaching and learning as far as the experience of students, but also in terms of the way that faculty members approach that, as well as because we have a distinguished group of experts who are going to be speaking to us tonight. And they're distinguished because they have deep expertise in terms of pedagogy, in terms of teaching and learning, and in terms of digital teaching and learning. Also, they have diverse perspectives because of the way that they have approached teaching and learning. So for these 2 reasons, we expect that to be incredibly exciting for you and for all of us. This event has sprung out of our Teaching and Learning Committee at Metropolitan College, and Mr. Mukhtaropoulos, as Dean of Digital Learning, is a leader in terms of the conceptualization of the event and the way that this event is going to be evolving, or we hope it's going to be evolving in the future. Because essentially what we want to do is share best practices with you, share best practices with the community, with students, with faculty, in terms of how we can best serve our students in their learning endeavors, as well as support our faculty in their pedagogical strides. Continuous improvement is the key in regards to doing this. So best practices and continuous improvement. And this is really what our Teaching and Learning Committee represents. This is really what we're trying to do. This is why we've organized the symposium, and this is why we are dreaming and we are envisioning a bigger symposium, one that we can develop in the future to include more talks from more experts and to be more far-reaching. We are committed as an institution to individualized learning. where the student is the focal point. These are very, very important themes in education today, whether we're talking about digital or face-to-face education. We really need to adapt to student needs, to student priorities, as far as the way that their education should be evolving, and not the other way around. This conversation is incredibly important, we believe, as far as the future of education. Technology has provided both opportunities, in my opinion, as well as challenges. AI, opportunities and challenges. The way that we are connecting through technology, opportunities and challenges. In the greater scheme of things, COVID-19 recently has presented several challenges which have been turned into opportunities in regards to advancing faster, transforming digital education in a much faster pace. Still though, no matter what, faculty members are deep experts. This is what they are, and this is what they will continue to be. And students are the reason for us to exist. So these two elements of education are incredibly important. Metropolitan College is at the forefront of these developments. It's a necessity for us, not a luxury, to invest in digital learning, because by nature, I mean, we are a very unique institution having 8 campuses in 6 diverse geographical regions of Greece. So it's a necessity in terms of how we manage our day-to-day affairs administratively, but also in the way that we connect with our students. But again, this is the future. So I would like to welcome you this evening. I would like to wish you all the best in terms of learning, in terms of interaction, as far as this symposium is concerned. I would like to welcome our students and the students from other institutions that I know are joining us tonight. Our colleagues, as well as you, ladies and gentlemen, and Mr. Mukhtaropoulos, the floor is yours again. Thank you.
Thank you, Triant, for the lovely introduction. At this point, we're ready to commence with our first speaker. And it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker for this event, which is Dr. Gregory Fowler, President of the University of Maryland Global Campus, UMGC. Unfortunately, Greg is unable to join us live today. However, he and the team at UMGC were thoughtful and fast enough to send us a video with his recorded presentation earlier today. Dr. Fowler became the 7th president of UMGC campus on January 2021, a nationally recognized scholar and leader in developing innovative learning models, experiences for adult and non-traditional populations. He has also served on the leadership teams that built what are now the 2 largest universities in America, both of which serve non-traditional students in non-traditional ways. Most recently, Greg served as a president of Southern New Hampshire University Global Campus, and before that, as its chief academic officer and vice president for academic affairs for its College of Online and Continuing Education. At this point, let us please watch his presentation.
Hello, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this important conversation. Talking with your Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Triant Flores, I was struck by the similarities between Metropolitan College and my own institution, University of Maryland Global Campus, in terms of both our mission and the characteristics of the students we serve. You remind us of us. And so I would like to talk briefly about the history of our institution, the challenges that are shaping higher education, and the student and workforce needs that will chart the path forward in the 21st century. As you may know, UMGC was established in 1947. It was designed in large part to serve military personnel returning to civilian life after World War II and seeking opportunities for themselves and their families. College classrooms here were filled to capacity, and most schools were ill-equipped to respond to the unique needs of this population. They were older than most first-year students, more mature, more motivated, and more likely to enroll in courses that taught practical skills and abilities that aligned with workforce needs. Many already had full-time jobs and families, and they needed flexibility around scheduling and accessibility. UMGC responded by offering classes in fields like business and accounting, off-site and off-hours, and eventually overseas as well, where American troops were stationed in post-war Europe and later in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. That focus on student needs and expectations has guided our university for more than 75 years and shapes every facet of our operations. Now, as in the late 1940s, new demographic groups are turning to higher education with new and different expectations and with new levels of skepticism about what higher education can deliver and whether it is worth the return on investment. While technology offers tantalizing opportunities to address long-standing challenges around access, quality, affordability, and equity, it does not represent a magic bullet. The technology at our disposal is remarkable, offering levels of insight and control unheard of just a decade or two ago. But our success will depend not so much on the tools we choose as on whether we use those tools to build relationships with our students, our faculty, and within our culture. As education leaders, it is critical that we understand this. There is no solution that we can set and forget. And embracing a technological solution with unrealistic expectation or failing to implement it properly can have disastrous results, sapping institutional energy, swallowing up resources, and even destroying the organization. I believe it is equally critical that we dedicate energy and resources to truly understanding the individuals that we serve and the realities of their day-to-day lives. Too often, enrolling in higher education has been like purchasing a mystery box or a grab bag. You aren't sure what you will get, and you only hope that it is worth the cost. Those who know me well know that I'm a huge movie fan, and while I love the movie Forrest Gump, we can't afford to let education be like a box of chocolates, where you have to bite into it to know what it is. Today's learners are increasingly likely to expect and even demand that coursework be directly relevant to their career objectives, that there be multiple options for reaching academic and career goals in addition to access and scheduling flexibility, and that faculty and staff offer support and resources that are tailored to their unique needs and demonstrate care for them as individuals and not just numbers. These same students are less likely to pursue a traditional four-year degree and instead may prefer stackable credentials, micro-credentials, certificates, or certifications. Many students who come to our university have previously been unsuccessful in higher education, despite having attended multiple institutions. From experience, though, we know that students who ultimately withdraw from classes or fail typically do so because life happens, and not because they are unable to master the content. If we expect non-traditional results, we must be willing to embrace non-traditional means. With this in mind, we have focused on harnessing technology and analytics to get progressively better at anticipating and responding to student needs, developing better insights into where and why they struggle, and responding in real time with the support and resources they need to maintain momentum. No matter their age, students today are accustomed to personalization, whether in terms of the way they order food, arrange for transportation, socialize online, or choose which digital content they will purchase or consume. These digital natives expect their interactions with the university to be similar to their interactions with other service providers in their daily lives. Transparent, intuitive, and personalized, easily conducted online or through mobile devices, meeting them where they are rather than insisting that they mold their lives to fit our demands. At UMGC, almost any administrative task can be accomplished online and remotely, and our restructured and unified Student Affairs Unit coordinates our various support teams, making them readily accessible, including success coaches, first-year experienced faculty, tuition planners, transcript evaluators, career advisors, tutors, and those in other roles. Finally, whenever and wherever possible, we centralize operations and scale our curriculum so that a student who begins her studies in Asia can continue seamlessly if her career or family responsibilities take her to Europe, the Middle East, or back to the United States. In all of this, our faculty play a critical role, and this has required us to be very intentional in considering what we mean by faculty and how they define success. We certainly have scholar practitioners who are actively engaged in the fields in which they teach, and they interact with students online as well as in hybrid and face-to-face settings in Maryland, across the United States, and in more than 20 countries and territories globally. Together, these team members help shape our curriculum so that it aligns with workforce needs and industry trends. They share their own expertise as mentors and guides in the journey of lifelong learning, and they act as the human face of our university for students who may never set foot in our headquarters here in Maryland or meet another university representative face-to-face. But in addition to scholars of specific traditional disciplines, our definition of faculty also must include experts in learning sciences and learning engineering. Many of us who've been college faculty can recall the early years of struggling not with our area of expertise, but with andragogy and assessment design. There are many places that assume you're a good teacher because you are an expert, when studies show that expertise is often a barrier to training and connecting with novices. So we have to include learning engineers, assessment specialists, and learning resource designers as part of the faculty team if we want to be true to our values around accessibility, equity, and inclusivity. This entire faculty team embraces a student-centric posture, and they often serve as the first line of defense, if you will, for those students who are experiencing hardship, who lack confidence, or who are otherwise struggling. Now, I realize that the term student-centric is increasingly common across higher education, and I hope those institutions that adopt it do so with the proper level of thought and care. What I'm referring to is both broader and deeper than finding existing institutional programs and services for which students are willing to pay. Rather, it requires reflective, deliberative work, and involves asking questions that must resonate deeply with an institution's mission and culture. These questions include, are we seeing the learning experience from the student's vantage point? And is this student's success and well-being what we value above all else? At UMGC, this meant that early in the global pandemic, we recognized that many of our students were facing new and nearly unimaginable challenges, with heightened anxiety levels compounded by health issues, job disruptions, and arrangements around schooling and childcare turned upside down literally overnight. In response, we established a special student aid fund for emergency relief, or SAFER as we call it. And in a matter of months, granted almost 350 modest, just-in-time awards, typically $500 each, to students facing emergencies or extenuating circumstances. The response from students was immediate and sometimes heartbreaking. One wrote, "The funds were indeed a godsend. I had budgeted for being unemployed in a functioning world. How can anyone have planned for a disaster like this?" Another wrote, "As a single mother with 2 children, I have very little room in my budget for things outside of the bare necessities. Thank you for your generosity and compassion." The long-term impact has been significant as well, with our initial data indicating that students who apply for and receive SAFER awards are 8% more likely than others to eventually re-enroll. This is not a simple task that we are involved in, but it certainly ranks among the most noble and most critical of missions. In the United States alone, even before the pandemic, some 40 million Americans had attended college without completing a degree, with little to show for it except debt and the reinforced belief that they aren't college material. Another 40 million have no post-secondary learning experience at all in a global economy that's increasingly demanding it. These are the students that we are committed to helping succeed. And the rewards far outweigh the sacrifices. One of our distinguished alumni is Ginger Miller. A military veteran, Miller struggled in her transition to civilian life, caring for a new baby and for her husband, a fellow veteran who was disabled and suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. Eventually, she became homeless and worked 3 jobs while studying full-time to help rescue her family from that situation. Ginger went on to found and serve as president and CEO of Women Veterans Interactive Incorporated, which has already provided support to more than 8,000 women veterans. And she was recently appointed by President Biden to the USO Board of Governors. It would be hard to overstate the impact she has had and continues to have on lives, families, communities, and the world, now and for generations to come. Ginger's story is a single drop of water, but when you add all of these hundreds of thousands of stories together, they become a wave sweeping across higher education, one that the most agile institutions will learn to navigate, while those who do not risk capsizing and drowning. I was excited to hear about your work because it is clear you are working to navigate these waters beside us. So thank you again for the invitation to join you today. Thank you for being part of this important conversation and for your belief in the power of education to inspire hope, empower dreams, and transform lives one student at a time. Thank you again.
Amazing overview of the current needs and expectations in higher education today by Craig. Thank you so much, Craig, for sending us your lovely presentation. At this point, I would like to introduce you to our next speakers. We'll be connecting with London. Our next speakers are Dr. Linda Amran-Cooper and Tim Hall, both from the Center for Online and Distance Education at the University of London. Dr. Linda Amran-Cooper is Director of Academic Practice in Distance Education at the University of London and is Director of CODE, the Center for Online and Distance Education. Linda's academic and professional career has spanned higher education, teaching, museum education. Linda also leads the postgraduate learning and teaching in higher education program at UOL, working with higher education teachers across the globe. Linda has extensive experience of working in a varied international context and has a passion for supporting learners. Previous roles have included 2 posts as Dean. Tim Hall is a Senior Product Innovation Manager at the University of London, with a background in using technology to enhance the university experience, and is currently a Senior Product Innovation Manager at the University of London. Working across HEI departments for the last 15 years, he has a wealth of knowledge on the best tools, strategies for integrating technology. In his current role in the online education department at the University of London worldwide, he is responsible for leading the development and implementation of new products, technology-based programs, and other innovative initiatives across the institution. Linda and Tim, wonderful to welcome you today. Thank you for being here tonight with us. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the welcome, and lovely to see everybody here on this call. Tim's very kindly going to sort of drive us through the slides, which is great. So thanks, Tim. If you're happy to put the first slide up, or is it already up? Oh no, there it is. Absolutely brilliant. Great. Okay. I'll just get myself organized with my notes, if I may. Okay, so Antonius has introduced Tim and I, which is lovely, and we would really like to say thank you very much for this invitation. It's a real privilege to be here. In a previous role, I had the opportunity to work with Metropolitan College in person quite often, and it's really lovely to build on that connection once more. I do kind of wish I was there in person, but this is good enough. So, as was outlined, we come from the University of London, and actually the University of London is a federation of about 17 colleges and institutes within London, including UCL, King's College, London School of Economics. Across the federation, there are about 120,000 students studying in person at the federation members. And then through the University of London online provision, we have approximately 48,000 students located in over 180 countries. We've been running distance education at the University of London for about 180 years, but as you can imagine, that wasn't always online. The work that Tim and I are mainly involved in is developing approaches to effective support for students working online. We deal with innovation and applied research, and as was pointed out, I also teach. I think there might be 1 or 2 of my students watching this, and a big hello to you if you are. Next slide, please. Artificial has very significant potential to provide both opportunities and challenges in higher education practice. In this slide, we have part of a very long list of the ways in which AI can be involved in higher education. We won't focus on the full list today, but I do feel encouraged when I see the potential identified here for AI to support our learners and ourselves. Picking out a few, we see AI in supporting inclusivity, supporting gamification of learning, supporting educators in the classroom, and AI in creativity. I'm going to focus on two aspects of AI in higher education today, assessment and personalised learning. And I think that builds quite nicely from our first speaker in the conference. Next slide, please. If we place our focus on an AI tool like ChatGPT, which has stormed the media, this is based on, can be described as being based on a large language model. It's worth reminding ourselves how this works because it does have implications for our role within HE. Here's a very simplified view of the process from the point of view of a non-AI expert myself. So volumes of text in, patterns, relationships identified, training to eliminate some types of outputs. Humans are involved in the training. For ChatGPT, for example, Kenyan workers were paid less than about $2 an hour to work on ChatGPT, to eliminate highly offensive outputs and make it less toxic. The input and the training determines the output, as well as the AI itself. So if we're in a world where the global north and Western viewpoints dominate the written word, which is what the AI trains on, then we can expect to see limited representation of diverse voices and points of view. Bias will therefore be inherent in the system. There are clearly significant implications for higher education. ChatGPT predicts the follow-on words. So if I ask it, who was the first person to land on the moon? It will respond with Neil Armstrong because Armstrong's name is consistently linked to the first moon landing in the large volume of data the AI has been trained on. But AI is able to code much more complex sets of issues, and here the opportunities and challenges arrive. Next slide, please. The Pandora's box of AI is open. And if we are to harness the opportunities and mitigate against some of the challenges, then dialogue, training, and information literacy skills will be essential, as will be adjustments to policy and guidance. The opportunities for harnessing AI in learning are exciting, and Tim will discuss some of the examples of AI and learning later on from the University of London. I'm going to focus on information literacy and assessment for the moment. Next slide, please. Preparing our students to locate, manage, interrogate, and assess the validity of information is a critical part of our role as educators. But AI is not causing us to do something new here. We already needed to support learners to develop information literacy skills and to engage in critical thinking. This outline of information literacy from UNESCO's Think Critically, Click Wisely publication identifies what we might consider to be the key aspects of effective information literacy. So let's look at how we might build an activity or an assessment using ChatGPT that puts information literacy skills into practice. Next slide, please. Using our example of the US space race, here's an activity that may take place over several sessions in the classroom with you supporting your students and perhaps with them working in pairs. They're creating some GPT prompts. In pairs, they're refining those prompts and selecting an issue each that they're going to explore. The overall topic here is gender in relation to space exploration, but it could be any topic or any concept within your subject area. They generate an 800-word written piece from ChatGPT. But we don't stop there. What we're then asking them to do is to head off to the library using AI library school search tools to get relevant journal articles and responses. And then, importantly, write a critical analysis of what ChatGPT has output. Next click, please. Alternatively, this could be an end assessment that builds on work undertaken over a period of time. The student is developing their skills in defining and refining information needs. They have choice over the aspect they focus on and the opportunity to assess the validity of the ChatGPT output. Of course, for gender and US space exploration, any concepts can be built in. And the level and depth at which you would like your students to work here depends on their level and what your learning outcomes are. I was prompted in developing this idea through reading a blog by Ryan Watkins called Update Your Course Syllabus for ChatGPT. There's a link in the slide and at the end of the set. Next slide, please. So we would like to engage you in a discussion. So can I invite you to log into the Menti site or use the QR code pointing your camera at the screen? In relation to assessment challenges across the HE sector, there's been a lot of discussion about the issue of text matching software not currently being able to detect AI written submissions. EdTech firms like Turnitin are working hard to adapt their product to spot AI written work. As the wide range of AI tools develop, and as we increasingly perceive the risk to assessment integrity that AI presents, then we may find ourselves seeking technological solutions. We can see an arms race developing, with AI growing increasingly more sophisticated, and the technology to review student work for originality and validity trying to keep pace. The students are seen as the enemy, and the tech are the arms that each side deploy. So I'd like to invite you to consider the question, how can we disrupt the challenge of AI in assessment? And I'm just going to swap screens so that I can share the Mentimeter results. Apologies for the slight delay as I move the screens around. Hopefully that can be swapped in by colleagues onto the screen. So if colleagues would like to continue to add in comments, they'll start to stream in here. Got some really interesting suggestions here. Have students create their own assessment with the help of the tutor. Involve students in the process, self-assess. I think that's quite interesting. Change assessments to include more interaction between students and teachers. There's some really interesting suggestions here. Look at all of the assessment opportunities we've been putting off because we didn't think it was important. Assessments based on experiential learning, absolutely, and which would be difficult for AI to fake for us. Critical thinking and source evaluation, absolutely. And change the desired outcomes of assessments. Some great suggestions there. Yeah, I like the suggestion of have students note down the progress of their assignments, keeping a diary of the work that they're doing. Paraphrasing is the best solution to avoid AI. Excellent. Comparing ChatGPT with journal papers. Yeah, really good stuff here. We'll be able to share this with you. So we'll probably move on to the next slide if that's okay. So if we could go back to the slides, and we'll share the output from the Mentimeter. So I'm just going to finish really as I move on. And from my perspective, there is an arms race out there, and it won't do any of us any good. The technology, both in terms of detection and the technology in terms of AI that's available, will continue to develop. But it seems to me that the places that we can have most value and have most impact is when we start to think about promoting ethical behavior and redesigning assessment, as we've seen in the suggestions that have come through. So I think in terms of promoting ethical behavior, it's very much about having dialogues about the meaning of the work that we do within higher education, linking it to the world of work and the importance of that, making the activities relevant, but also understanding the value of writing, of art, music, our creativity, and that AI is a tool to support these creative processes. Students need to understand expectations, and they need to understand the rationale for ethical behaviour in terms of assessment. In our assignments and in the assessments that we do, we can focus on what humans can do really well: reflection, critical analysis, interpersonal communications, decision-making. AI tools can be part of the student work, and we can use AI to provide formative assessment and feedback, which is where my wonderful colleague Tim is going to step in. I'll hand over to you now, Tim.
Thanks so much, Linda. Okay, I'll jump straight in. As I've been introduced, I'm Tim Hall. I work for the product innovation team within the online education department at the University of London. And one of the projects that I'm currently involved in is the AI tutor pilot. It's clear that one-to-one tutoring is an effective means of teaching students. However, with increased workloads for academics, large class sizes, and in the case of the University of London worldwide, the fact that our students are all over the world means that traditional one-on-one tutoring is not really a sustainable or scalable solution. The University of London is piloting the use of Noodle Factory's Walter to find out whether an AI tutor approach could help us achieve our goals of improving student performance, increasing student engagement and with study materials, and empowering our educators and program teams. The purpose of the pilot really is to assess the suitability of this tool and to understand whether they could be rolled out more widely across the worldwide programs. So a brief kind of explanation, the key differences between the ChatGPT and Walter platforms is that Walter is purpose-built for education, whilst ChatGPT is meant for general use. Now, although the goal has changed somewhat, one of ChatGPT's aims is to focus on the use of conversational AI to replace existing search engines. And as you may know, ChatGPT currently offers a disclaimer that it can generate incorrect information, it can produce harmful instructions or content, and it offers limited knowledge of the world and events after 2021, although this is rapidly being overcome by OpenAI and ordinary users. On the other hand, we expect Walter to provide contextualized AI tutoring, grading, and feedback using a conversational interface, as seen in the slide. And what this means is that all tutoring information provided by this platform has been curated by the program teams using existing program content. It's important to say at this point that none of the content has been created specifically for the use of Walter. As Linda said, the use of AI is growing in the education sector and for many practical reasons, such as task automation. So we have grading, assessment automation, translating automation, timetabling automation, and automated interventions, which potentially can free up lecturers and professional services staff to spend more time with supporting students. It's not a replacement of the role of tutor, and I think that's a really important thing to say, but it attempts to complement the educator, giving them more time to provide an enhanced student experience. Practically, what we're looking at as far as this tool is concerned is that program teams can now drag and drop textbooks, lesson plans, course notes, question banks, video transcripts, and other relevant course content onto the platform. The platform then generates knowledge bases and assessment questions, which program teams can, if they wish, curate into recommended learning paths. Educators then can extract automatically generated questions based on their course content for use elsewhere if they want to. So, for example, putting together questions for summative assessments. And importantly, they can gain insight on student activity and learning gaps. As far as students concerned, students will get personalized learning pathways, giving an instant and individualized feedback on their assessment. All things that can make for a really enhanced learning experience. So when the student logs in via their virtual learning environments, they can simply start asking questions of the chatbot. They use curated learning paths by selecting prompts and following the tutoring sequence to navigate through content. They gauge their current levels of knowledge by taking quizzes. They check answers against recommended responses and are guided through relevant knowledge for questions answered incorrectly. They can also provide feedback on the content and assessment, and this goes back to something that Triant was saying about continuously improving our offering, and that's why it's so important to provide an opportunity for students to provide feedback on these sorts of things. We're currently aiming at this point to populate the platform with course content, and we're aiming to deploy within the next month. So I'm excited that we'll be providing an update to the University of London's RIDE conference in March, if any of you are interested in coming along and seeing how this is getting on. Now, as Linda said, the development of a widely available consumer-friendly AI such as ChatGPT is, of course, going to lead to increased usage and exploration of its capabilities, which far surpasses what was initially anticipated by many. This is leading to a lot of unexpected uses as this new technology is pushed to solve all sorts of novel problems. And obviously, what I'm going to say now is going to come with a huge health warning, of course, but it's important to note that despite what we might prefer, students are already using this in ways that aren't as cynical as cheating and should be kind of, I believe, approached with interest by academic staff. Those sorts of things include explaining concepts, perhaps in a more simple way than taught, correcting errors of works that they may have already written. As a source of inspiration, you know, we've all had that moment of staring at a blank page, and prompts generated by these platforms can be really, really useful. As a summary tool, so pulling together course content in order to avoid missing key elements, and for personal development. So the example I've given on this page is to practice and improve language skills by engaging in conversation with it. AI is here to stay. I think we're all kind of agreed on that, and it's clear from talking to our student voice group just yesterday that their enthusiasm, interest and capabilities in this area, regardless of what they're studying, is increasing. By the way, anecdotally, our students are really also concerned about AI's impact on assessment and are interested in what we're doing about it. So the following examples may not be groundbreaking, but I'm just going to talk a little bit about them and what could be possible in a matter of years. Obviously, is going to far outstrip what I'm going to talk about now, but this may have a huge impact in student retention and achievement. We see providers already adopting AI for personalized pastoral support for students, supporting curriculum development, further automation of administrative tasks, enhancing discussion and group activities, simulating real-world interactions for learning, personalized study plans, adaptive curriculum, additional language support for students not fluent in language of instruction, and importantly, assistance with providing additional accessibility support through things like text-to-speech or on-demand and immediate reformatting of materials, which just would not be something we'd be able to offer in the past. Speaking of the bad, what you've been watching on this slide is a new example of how AI is able to modify your appearance in quite a subtle way. I'm using this example to kind of reinforce something that Linda said. You know, I put it to you that this sort of tool is potentially one way that a tenacious student might combat AI proctoring, for example, which sort of hopefully brings me around to the final point that Linda was trying to make, which is that we should try to avoid steady ramping up of the pedagogies of policing and punishment and replace them with pedagogies of educational dignity and develop more authentic ways of teaching and assessment, using these tools if they make sense to do so. I think I'll finish up by saying tomorrow's AI-enabled students will graduate into a world where AI-enabled research, authoring, decision-making are all key professional skills. And it's important for educational institutions, including myself and my colleagues in the product innovation team, to be working on how we adapt our offering to ensure that our students are prepared for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Tim, for your thought-provoking raised questions and thoughts on a really lovely presentation. Please send any questions that you might have in the chat on YouTube or into the designated email. I've already got a couple of them. And following up from the issue you raised at the end, Tim, the human factor, the human agency factor, I believe it would be crucial at this point. Can AI enable at some point a more human-centric learning, if I might call it this way? And is it any particular skills and knowledge application that humans cannot do and AI cannot do, so that we can push forward a more human-centric knowledge framework?
I don't know whether you want to go first, Linda, or...
Well, I'm happy to just sort of reiterate a little bit of what I was saying before, which is I think that in terms of assessment, for example, then drawing on skills of reflection, talking about how you went about doing the assessment, as somebody suggested, is exactly the sort of thing that students can engage with, that would be really quite interesting for them as well, very personalized, very much about them and their processes, and would also help them to develop other types of skills in addition to the content knowledge that they're demonstrating. And those are important skills related to the workforce and the future of the workforce. So I think there are some really exciting opportunities here, and I'm very keen for us to embrace that, and that's why I'm delighted that Tim and the team are doing what they're doing within the university. I think the other thing, the point that Tim made, sorry, Tim, I know you're going to come in, is just the importance of perhaps liberating people like myself who are teaching online to have a bit more time away from administrative type interactions to then focus on the deeper learning, supporting the deeper learning of my students and of myself.
Yeah, I think just to kind of reinforce that, I think, you know, one of the things that we'd hope to use AI for is more about, you know, enhancing the roles of you know, the program teams that are involved in running these courses. And I think, you know, some of the discussion around assessment, and Linda could speak more to this, I'm sure, if somebody asks the question, but around having, you know, smaller kind of bite-sized face-to-face interviews with the students, either, you know, online or in person, and really just having a conversation about what they think about the subject matter that they're talking about. Because you know, it's interesting to look at some of the research around, you know, how much you can get out of a 15-minute conversation with someone about a topic compared to how much you can gauge they know about a subject by reading a paper that they've written in 3.5 hours in an exam. And I think we will see more, you know, alternative assessment in order to try and get over what you were talking about, you know, things that humans can do better, and more of a focus maybe on knowledge interrogation rather than just knowledge regurgitation.
Yeah, and this gets me to the next question, which is that will the education role change drastically in this part? Is it part of HE educators to become future-proof at some point? Would they need specific skills to be future-proof in this regard?
I mean, being as old as I am, I'd really like to reflect on the fact that actually in my whole teaching career, which has spanned really quite a long time, there's never been a time when it hasn't been evolving. So that, you know, I moved from chalk to whiteboards, etc. All the way through my teaching career, there have been evolutions and revolutions, and COVID certainly pushed us. And in terms of assessment practice, assessment largely moved online kind of across the globe, where it could, where there was the right access and so on. And that changed everybody's kind of understanding and approach to and engagement with assessment. Post-COVID, if we are post-COVID, we're seeing that there's a bit of a retrenchment. People are going back to some of the more traditional assessment approaches. And then suddenly, and it's not suddenly, it's been there for a long time, but suddenly in the news, we've got AI and we've got access to AI. And all that does is just say to us, we really do need to continue having this dialogue and this development and this evolution of the way in which we work with students and the way in which we assess students and the meaning of assessment, taking it right back, I hope, to assessment for learning and AI for learning. That's going to be my new badge, AI for learning.
Thank you, Linda. One of the questions discusses that how do you see the integration of AI in education impacting students who may not have strong digital literacy skills? And this is one of the points you raised earlier on before. Are there any measures recommending to ensure that these students are not left behind at this shift forward?
I mean, if I may, Linda, I think this kind of builds on something that Linda was speaking about, in the sense that, I think when it comes to teaching, it's not just about kind of assuming that everyone is a digital native and that they have a certain kind of literacy when it comes to their digital skills. But I think it's really important to integrate in the same way as we do with many tools that are now seen as kind of standard. We talk to students about ways in which to use, the Office suite and things like that, as part of their studies. And I think that really has to be integrated, and I think it needs to go almost even deeper into that, as Linda's spoken about, like the ethics of these things, about the consequences of even simple things like signing up to ChatGPT and understanding what it means as far as kind of sharing your information and the consequences of all of this. So I absolutely believe that it's part of our. I mean, we talk about preparing people for this new world. Those parts of training, those parts are fundamental, and I think we're well suited to be able to provide training and teaching on this.
If I could just add to that, if I may, for a moment, I think we also need to ensure that we're providing access to. I mean, ChatGPT is free at the moment because they're using us to train, but it will probably go behind a paywall, and other AI tools are behind paywalls. So that inherently means that some students are disadvantaged. So it is important for us to integrate the AI tools into the provision that we provide within the universities, so that everybody has kind of equal access to the resources and can use those resources. So in addition to training and thinking about the ethical and other implications, there's also that point of just being able to use the resources. If it goes into Microsoft, then we'll have to make sure all of our students get Microsoft access too. That's true.
The last question was not generated by a human, but it was generated by ChatGPT. As you spoke, I just entered GPT to ask you a question. So, in light of models of AI-powered language models impacting the efficiency and processes of research in higher education, how do you see AI-powered language models impacting the efficiency and processes of research in higher education? As we've seen, I assume that the model wants to ask whether literature review modules such as Elicit, for example, when you co-create any model you want, how would you see that impacting it ethics-wise or process-wise?
I think there are quite significant ethical questions there, but they're not unrelated to the ethical questions that we've already been talking about. I think. We're often presented with tech solutions that are going to revolutionize the way in which we work, and yet they don't really very quickly. They take a long time to actually impact the way in which we do work. And in that process, the workload never seems to get any smaller. So I think that while AI tools that can help us with our research will be welcome to some extent, and will present important issues in terms of policy, ethics, and research training, they won't necessarily liberate us from the slog of research and from the excitement of research. I think they will complement it.
Yeah, I think I'm really interested. Obviously, we focus mainly on kind of large language models, but I think everyone has to remember at the same time we've got massive steps forward in AI being able to generate 3D models in art, in animation, in video content. And I think actually what's going to be really interesting is how researchers use these platforms. In lots of examples, I imagine they'll be combined to be able to do research that just wasn't possible before because of scalability issues or just cost issues. Generating things like virtual environments for people to interact in, that kind of thing, I think is going to be really, really interesting. So I think I mean, that's not even considering the kind of research that's going on right now into how these things actually work as well, because there is that kind of big question about we kind of know how they work, but also there are some gray areas in which we're trying to understand why the prompts do the things that they do. So I think if anything, it's just huge amounts more research is going to be required, and we're going to have to use these tools in order to keep up.
True. And a last question, if I may, please, from the audience. Do you think that AI grading will reach to the point to give much more fair grades? I'm sure discusses about awarding grades in a specific benchmark without needing any moderation, any second marking at some point. I'm just reading between the lines.
I mean, I think that's a really interesting question, actually, and unpacking the question is not really about AI. It's about the processes and the policies, and indeed the fundamental questions of what is assessment for, what does it do, and how is it practiced. AI is a tool that can help us, and as we've seen with the AI tutor that Tim's introduced, it has the potential to support students to steer and take an independent path through their learning, which is really, really valuable. I think that we will always have the need to moderate assessment in one way or another, and AI may be able to help us with that. But I think ultimately, what we're assessing at university level, certainly in higher education, are application of critical skills, synthesis, creativity. These are a lot of tools that present AI is very far from being able to really demonstrate itself, and that emphasis on what can humans do that AI can't currently do and perhaps won't do for a long time, I think is a place to sit with there. So I suspect there'll always be the opportunity for assessment not to be completely 100% fair, and that's a really important issue for us all to grapple with, students and staff.
Just to add to that, I mean, obviously, as we know, just because something is being done through AI doesn't mean it's not biased. And in fact, AI has many problems with bias as well. And I think that's something that needs to be considered. I guess the question would be as well, if a piece of kind of assessment can be checked, completely without any kind of human involvement, like how valuable is it as a sort of summative assessment? I mean, with formative assessment, slightly different, but I think it kind of goes back to what Linda was saying about, we kind of need to look at other ways in which we can have, rich and authentic assessment that works in an age of AI.
If I've got a second, there's one other comment that I would like to add, which is that assessment is not just norm referenced. It is about individual progress, and that's really important. What we might call ipsative assessment, or learning gain. So thinking about, as an individual, how much better have I got with my assignment? And I think that AI can be really helpful there, because it can identify the way in which my writing or my creative product is improving. And it could be trained by, an artist to identify those kind of improvements. So it gives me an opportunity to self-assess. And I think that will be very valuable as well. Really brilliant questions. Yeah, brilliant questions. Thank you.
Brilliant, and brilliant answers as well. Thank you, Linda, and thank you, Tim, for being here today. Thank you so much for a truly inspiring presentation.
Thank you.
At this point, let us please connect with the East of England in Cambridge for our second speaker today, Dr. Imogen Caseburn. Imogen is an Innovation Lab research lead at DEFI, the Digital Education Futures Initiative at the University of Cambridge. Imogen is interested in the design, development, deployment, and evaluation of EdTech, and particularly in the role technology might play in supporting experiences of community and serendipity in learning. Prior to joining the DEFI Innovation Lab, Imogen consulted for multiple organizations, including leading business school, Wikipedia, as well as the NHS. Imogen is also an award-winning EdTech designer with projects including a maths revision app for HarperCollins, as well as a mobile authoring tool, which went on to become Gomo Learning. Imogen, it's truly an honor to welcome you today in our event. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here and really interesting talks so far. So thank you. So can I share my screen? Let's see. What's happening? Can everyone see the screen? Yes, I think you can all see the screen.
Yes, we can.
Perfect.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Excellent. So I want to talk today about some possible and plausible futures of collaborative learning supported by technology. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what I mean by collaborative learning and the types of things that we can do and the advantages of it, and also then touch a little bit on the possible future role of AI in collaborative learning, and also about how people might in future learn collaboratively in more immersive worlds. Just before I get started, I want to there we go. Briefly introduce DEFI. So DEFI is situated in the University of Cambridge, Hughes Hall, and we're seeking to put together a global group of researchers across disciplines, and also practitioners, policymakers and innovators, as well as researchers, and we produce translational research and also consultancy. So what I mean by collaborating is an EdTech to support collaboration is not necessarily learning through collaboration, but also learning how to collaborate. And I think that raises the question of why learn to collaborate. Why should that potentially be part of a future curriculum and to be supported by educational technology? Well, today, a great many employers are asking for collaborative skills. Workplaces often involve a great deal of teamwork, and employers complain that perhaps graduates don't necessarily have those teamwork, collaboration skills when they first start working. And the extent to which teamwork is becoming and collaboration is becoming increasingly important. I think I saw a debate recently about whether Nobel Prizes for science should really be awarded to individuals in the future, because so much of the work is actually done by teams. So that sort of focus and importance of collaboration today. Additionally, we're seeing an increasingly volatile world. We're seeing, I think, as the first speaker alluded to, a world in which lifelong learning is becoming more and more important, a world in which we face very complex challenges, which we can perhaps only solve through collaboration, and also a world in which we have all these new tools, social media, which are changing the way that people learn, the way that people interact when they're not in education. There's been a great deal of debate on the nature of the skills that people will need in the future, and particularly research into what are often called 21st century or future skills. Recently, some colleagues of mine undertook a scoping study and found 99 different frameworks for 21st century skills, and I think 341 separate skills. But one of the sets of skills that featured particularly strongly amongst all of those frameworks were what they called dialogue skills, including collaboration, communication, and listening. And collaboration and communication also often feature in what are known as the 4 C's: collaboration, communication, creativity, and critical thinking. So there is a need to learn collaborative skills, and technology can support people learning collaborative skills. Now, obviously, we have now a number of a great many collaborative technologies that have sprung up in the last 15 or 20 years. You think about forums, social media. I think someone mentioned Wikipedia. I did a study with Wikipedia about 10 years ago, comparing it to the Encyclopedia Britannica for accuracy. And obviously the Encyclopedia Britannica is written by experts, whereas Wikipedia is a collaborative initiative. But we found that, in fact, the accuracy, we compared articles, was very similar. So experts considered the articles to be similarly accurate. We also have tools such as Google, team working tools, Microsoft Teams, that enable us to work collaboratively in teams. And of course, we have video conferencing tools such as Zoom and all its many similar tools that came to the rescue during the pandemic, which allow us to discuss in real time. So all of these tools weren't particularly designed for education, but can potentially support collaborative learning in education. And technology doesn't necessarily have to be highly futuristic to be helpful in this respect. One of DEFI's projects is a simulated internship program for younger children. So children in the UK, before they perhaps chosen their which subjects they will study for GCSEs, when they're still thinking about perhaps what the world of work might be for them, they can get involved with these projects. And the way they work is that an industry leader is videoed and sets a real challenge, a real workplace challenge, and the children then watch the video in the classroom and work in groups with some teaching support to address those challenges and present them back to the industry leader. So this is using not an especially futuristic technology, simply video, but it's a way to allow the children to learn how to collaborate, learn what it's like to collaborate among real world problems, and get a feeling for the world of work, which can be exciting and inspiring for them. But it doesn't necessarily come naturally, as I'm sure many people have experienced. Simply putting people into groups and asking them to collaborate or to discuss won't necessarily be successful. It's important to actually teach for dialogue and collaboration. This is a reference to a study that DEFI's director, Professor Wegerif, and colleagues undertook about just over 20 years ago, and it's a very highly cited study. And in it, they were able to show that children learning to collaborate in groups to discuss and solve problems in groups actually became better at problem solving individually. And they were able to demonstrate that by using the Raven's reasoning tests, and they gave them to the groups and also to individuals. And as people learned how to discuss and collaborate in a group, they then became better at performing the reasoning tasks on their own. And one of the things that was important in teaching the children how to discuss and collaborate as a group was setting ground rules. And these are some of the ground rules that the children came up with themselves, giving people a chance to talk, making sure everybody's ideas are listened to, making sure that everybody speaks, looking and listening to the person talking, and then following the discussion, agree as a group on an idea. And this research has been repeated multiple times in multiple places with adults as well as children, and the ground rules may be different in different contexts and cases, but it seems to hold up. They find that that learning to collaborate in groups will increase performance on reasoning. And they also videoed the children so they could see what they were saying and what types of talk was perhaps leading to better performance. And this was not sort of disputational talk, not talk where people are arguing and individually insisting that they know the right answer, or not necessarily talk where the group was all agreeing without really discussing, but what they call exploratory talk, where people were critically questioning, but maintaining respect for the group, and where everyone was focused on answering the question they were targeting together. So that's how collaboration can potentially be taught, and that can help people improve their classroom or in-person collaboration, and also collaboration online. There have been a number of studies of how people collaborate in forums. It's possible that having time to think rather than speaking in the moment can maybe potentially increase critical thinking. So there may be differences between how people collaborate online and in classrooms. So I want to just talk briefly about AI and collaborative learning. And in the last talk, there was a lot of interesting discussion of ChatGPT. And what I have, this image here is something that I generated with DALL-E, which is the image generating part of OpenAI. There are other ones such as Midjourney, which do similar things. And I wrote a blog just after Christmas. I think, like many people, I spent some time over Christmas playing with ChatGPT and trying to find out what it could do. I was quite interested in it because a long time ago, I studied artificial intelligence, and I wrote a program that generated fairy stories, and it was quite rudimentary back then, but I've been interested in this sort of generative AI ever since, and I thought it would be fun to find out what ChatGPT can do. And one of the things I found out was that it generates false references. So any students hoping to create a fully referenced article without having to do any work at all should beware, because it will create very plausible looking but not actually genuine references to journal articles. So I had some dialogue and discussion with ChatGPT to find out how to the extent to which it was aware of what was real and what was false, and I wrote about that. But I think future AI, future ChatGPT-like things or itself will probably become more accurate and less likely to do this in the future. But that's certainly something that's happening now. But one of the things that we're interested in at DEFI is how AI might support collaborative learning. And one quite interesting development is AI is supporting research into collaborative learning, because obviously researching group dynamics, how people are learning together as a group, can be more complex than researching how individuals are learning. And one of the things that AI can help with is looking at analysing multimodal data. And by that I mean things like discourse and gesture and expressions. So researchers have set up cameras in the classroom and they're able to collect all of this data, and then AI can help bring it together and analyze it. And I think that's going to help us understand more about collaboration and communication in the future. So that's quite an interesting way in which I think AI can help us understand how to better teach collaboration. Additionally, AI can perform introduction services. So there's lots of very interesting research into intelligent tutoring systems and EduBots that can provide personalized learning, which will be really helpful for students, particularly in large classes. But they can also connect students with tutors. So the first reference there is to a program where the students, if they got stuck, they could tell the AI what they were stuck with, and it would act a bit like a dating service and connect them to a relevant human tutor. And the second one is a link to a chatbot, which was designed to help connect new students with other new students, like-minded students or people interested in similar things, with the intention of combating loneliness when people went off to university and maybe didn't immediately meet or make friends. So that's a way in which AI may support collaboration, acting as a dating service and bringing people together. We're also interested in how it might support collaboration in real time. So there are two examples. Obviously, we've had an example earlier with the Mentimeter, so you could see us collaborating with ideas in real time. There are two tools here. There's Swarm AI, which there's Nesta have written about, which from Unanimous, I think it is the creator, and it helps people make collective decisions in real time. And there's some evidence that those decisions may be better than if they were made without the support of the AI. And Polis is a similar tool which has been used to help people making political decisions. So it's enabling people to see decisions in real time. And then the link at the top of this list is quite interesting. It's a link to it's a robot AI product that helps teachers work with groups, or was designed to help teachers work with groups. And they say that they what it can do is monitor the groups, and if the group discussions are grinding to a halt or stalling or not progressing, it can alert the teacher, and the teacher can go and visit that group. And what's interesting is that they found that it wasn't leading to increased performance in quite the way they were expecting, and they thought that was partly because the teacher couldn't get to all the groups at once. So they were thinking the future research angles might be the AI prompting the group and helping them get back on track. And you could see how they might do that. They might remind people. You could have an EduBot that reminds a group of the ground rules for learning, or helps or notices when people are going into sort of cumulative group decisions without really thinking through, and ask them to think more about what they're actually saying and consider other perspectives. So you could have AI tools which support group collaboration. And then moving on, I wanted to talk a little bit about immersive worlds and how AI might be used. And how immersive worlds might support collaboration. And obviously, again, these aren't necessarily new. People have been studying VR since the early 90s, but we're at a point in time where we're seeing companies such as Meta and Google investing a great deal of money in their education arms, and they certainly envisage a future in which these will be important educational tools. And similarly, we see game makers such as Fortnite, games such as Fortnite and Minecraft also have educational components. So the ability to use these worlds as educational worlds and collaborative worlds is something that I think we're going to see more and more of in the future. There's also quite a good deal of evidence that things like virtual science labs are quite effective, and there are countries which are considering using them rather than perhaps investing a huge amount of infrastructure in building actual physical science labs, because it may be quicker and perhaps cheaper and perhaps as effective to use virtual science labs for students rather than trying to build physical ones. And that's obviously an interesting, you can imagine future formative assessment might be to meet with your student peers in a virtual science lab and conduct some experiments and then come back to class and talk about what you did and what you found. So they're really interesting. It's early days in terms of these worlds now being launched in an educational format. We saw a lot of work, of course, a few years ago with Second Life. But one of the things that we're interested in is the ethics of how these worlds are built and how people experience them. And that's something that we're hoping to look into more in the future at DEFI. So in terms of collaboration in immersive worlds, there's been quite a lot of research over the years into collaboration in games, particularly in massive multiplayer games. There was a lot of research into World of Warcraft, which is one of the earlier very big games, which is still going strong, although I noted that they've just been turned off in China owing to a dispute, much to the upset of many gamers. But these types of games enable people to undertake quests together and to work in groups. And the mechanics of these games, by which I mean what you need to do to win in the game, often encourage group work. And these are often discussed in terms of some of the features that were originally proposed by Johnson & Johnson when they were studying in-person group work, but they're often referred to by people designing serious games. And I just wanted to mention some of these, and you can see how these might be used in the design of future virtual worlds. Positive interdependence is where you need several different roles need to come together to accompany a task, which is something that is forces people to collaborate. You can't succeed without working with someone from another role. And another interesting thing about taking on roles is that obviously people can choose to play different roles on different occasions, and that perhaps enhances perspective taking and empathy because you are able to consider a task from more than one perspective, having played more than one role. There are other things such as group processing, where groups get together, for example, to plan quests. And between group competition, there are some serious games which have found that is something which can often enhance within group collaboration. And there are also games which have dashboards that encourage individual accountability and stop people in teams from freeloading. So in summary, I think there are some really interesting ways that we could see these different things coming together, AI prompts and virtual worlds, and we can see some really interesting potential futures for education. If anyone's interested in DEFI or wants to find out more, there are just some links here. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you again, Imogen, for a truly inspiring presentation today. A question that comes to my mind is obviously regarding student motivation, student engagement in terms of collaborative learning, working in groups, this enhanced in most cases. Can we use technology in collaborative learning to maintain or increase student motivation and engagement?
Yeah, I think when we see people collaborating in groups together, they appear highly motivated. You see them moving together, working together in face-to-face environments, yeah, and during, you know, in games, in quests, you can see people getting very excited as they work together. So I think collaboration can be very engaging. I think it's important to design it so that it is engaging, and to think about some of the factors that we've talked about in terms of the ground rules, in terms of ensuring that people engage respectfully with each other, in terms of perhaps giving people roles and allowing them to change roles, because I think those things probably facilitate motivation.
And I assume that this comes to the one of the points you raised at some point. How do we address issues of parity or group dynamics, so that in collaborative learning we use education to equally distribute work or output?
Yeah, and I think that can be quite a challenge. I was listening to a talk at a conference by someone who was involved in assessing teamwork. And it recalled to me when I was doing a master's, and there was another master's course, and they were asked to work in teams, and they were finding the fact they were assessed as a team quite challenging, because it felt they were used to being assessed as individuals, and they weren't really quite sure how to be assessed as a team and how that would be fair. And I think the idea of individual accountability within a team and positive interdependence can perhaps help with those types of things. And you can, there's been work that's been done in assessing the collective intelligence of a group as opposed to of individuals, and they found that was correlated with social skills rather than individual IQs, which is quite interesting, I think.
Brilliant. And perhaps AI comes to the rescue as far as the design of assessments for group work, for collaborative learning is concerned, or providing feedback, as we discussed earlier on before. Is it, do we follow the same process along as far as collaborative learning or synergism is concerned? Yes,
I mean, I think AI can certainly help. We have a director of assessment at DEFI, and he's interested in the ecological validity of assessments. So, you know, so I think, you know, seeing how people are coming together in groups and using multimodal data could be the future. Although, of course, it does create and collect a great deal of data, which is the case with many AI programs, and I think was touched on by the previous speakers. There's going to be a need to make sure there's an understanding of how that data is used and by whom in terms of ethics.
True. Thank you so much again, Imogen, for your time, for your world-class expertise presented today, for your fantastic presentation on collaborative learning and tech. It was a joy to welcome you here today.
Thank you.
So now I would like to introduce you to our final speaker for today. Last but not least, Professor Rafat Sadeh from Beijing Institute of Technology. Rafat is a multidisciplinary scientist and professional, bridging the arts, science of fundamental areas such as digital innovation, transformation, performance, and change management. Formerly the chair of Supply Chain and Business Technology Department at Concordia University in Canada, he is currently a chair professor at the School of Global Governance, as well as a chief scientist at the Global Aviation Development Academy in Beijing Institute of Technology, Beijing, China. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your knowledge with us, Rafat. Lovely to welcome you today.
Thank you so much, Andonis. Thank you so much, Triant, for the great opportunity to share my thoughts and what excites me about my work and my life. First, I would like to share my screen. Take 2 seconds. All right. Need to find the file. Okay. So does everybody see? Okay, that's great. You see my PowerPoint slides. So today what I want to share with you is some of my thoughts and some of my work about the future of education. There's so many things to talk about. That's such a broad topic. And so one of the things I decided to talk about is about online learning. Online learning is here to stay, whether it's artificial intelligence or information technology tools. Everybody is trying to integrate those into their learning curriculum, into their classroom. So in my presentation today, I sort of split it into three parts. One is I want to talk to you about online learning, sort of the state of online learning today globally, just to get a feel about its popularity, how much it's being used around the world. Of course, we know that because of COVID-19, probably 100% of the world have used it, but we'll have a little talk about that. Then I want to introduce the concept Internet of Technology. Some of my latest work today is about the Internet of Things and artificial intelligence, and something that I would call the Internet of Intelligence of Things. And then finally, I'm taking the risk here to give my thoughts about tomorrow's education ecosystem. How will the education look like, and what's going to happen in the future, in the next 10 years or so? So today, in one report, they mentioned that the market size for online learning is $101 billion US dollars, and in 2026 it will be 167. I looked at many other different sources, and I think that this is just scratching the surface. I think it will be maybe 2 or 3 times at least, if not more, by 2030. Online university education, this data comes from STAT, I think, from the website, and the global number of, or percentage of academic institutions that have online learning courses and programs is 67%. In EU is 12.5. In the BRIC countries, it's 4.5. In Southeast Asia, it's 2.5. And that's very important to know from an institutional perspective in terms of where to go and try to get students. But now when we're talking about online learning, everybody has some sort of a learning management system or digital learning platform. And remember that this context of managing content has been going on for at least 2 decades or so with the document management systems, and it moves to content management systems. And then they started to say a learning management system, which I had a problem from its onset. And even till today, I have a problem understanding or being very critical about learning management systems today. And there are many, literally there are in the hundreds. And so here I just threw some 24 list of the top reported learning management systems or digital learning platforms. And it depends who you ask, you will get different top 5s, different top 10s. I had a lot of experience over the last 2 decades, 2.5 decades with learning management systems. I've used the Blackboard, First Class. My first online class in 2003, if I'm not mistaken, was using First Class, which is a document management system. Now it's called OpenText. It was pretty good. It was doing the job, and I had the classes of 100 students plus at that time. And now I'm using DingTalk. I have used Moodle extensively for many, many years at the institutional level. And I'm using now Lark as well, which is international application, sort of like First Class. And I taught IT-supported classes, hybrid classes, fully online classes, ranging from 100 students in the class to 2,000 students in the class. So what everyone keeps talking about when we're talking about learning management systems and digital learning platforms, what they're talking about is always the speed. How fast can you create a course? Excuse me, the communication. You can set up online and in-person training sessions easily, invite learners to self-register, and so on. Assessment, you can add tasks, quizzes, surveys, and assignments. You can upload assignment, and somebody can upload the students can upload their assignments where you could download and correct. You can design and add your logo and brand colors, and so on. Yet, and when students are asked why they're taking online classes, they talk about it's affordable, it's self-directed, it's flexible with time and space, it's accessible. You know, they talk about all these mechanical features, but no one, hardly anyone, is talking about the true pedagogy, the e-pedagogy. There's a lot of courses that are being put up there where the classroom is mapped directly. It's a direct mapping to an online platform. So whatever you do in the classroom, you end up doing online. And to me, that's relatively unacceptable, because I'd like to know about the learning, and I'd like to know how this learning is packaged and framed and anchored in learning theories so that it makes pedagogical sense to meet the goals for learning. That includes assessment. It includes student care, whether you use artificial intelligence or not, but it's intelligent communications, for example, where intelligent components sense students' progress and they can intervene with the help of the professors or not to ensure students' needs meets the course goals. And then new methods, innovative methods for pedagogy. How can you use a quiz where you're prompted with multiple choice questions? How can that be used innovatively for learning, and not just here's the questions, answer them, and here's the response, and here's the answer? There's many different ways that this can be used for formative and for summative assessments at the same time. There's a lot of ways that technology can be leveraged to operationalize experiential learning, the concept of experiential learning as a pedagogy, case studies as a pedagogy, gamification as a case study, as a pedagogy, peer-to-peer learning as a pedagogy, and so on. But there's little talk about that, but I don't see there's enough talk and support towards this direction. So today, I'm involved a lot with the Internet of Things. I moved on to the Internet of Things and artificial intelligence, which I would call the Internet of Intelligence of Things. And this is what it looks like, in a sense, for education. For the educational system, this is what they have to contend with. Here at the bottom, you have, of course, the infrastructure. Here on the left side, you have the digital platforms that I've been talking about and services, because you need a platform that actually makes this available to teachers and to students and to teaching assistants. And here on the right has to do with administration. And these have to be, all these ducks have to be lined up, from the learning strategy, data strategy, and digital strategy. And here's where all the learning and teaching occurs, in this area, where you have sensors and you have effectors using the data coming from the environment, aggregating it into information, and consolidating and sharing, and utilizing it for knowledge management. So knowledge management through different mechanisms, so that teachers and learners can benefit from that based on the goals. So I was curious with the Internet of Things, and this is part of a recent publication I submitted, has not been accepted anywhere yet, but I would like to share with you. I was curious to find out how many professors or their state of readiness with respect to integrating the Internet of Things into an artificial intelligence into their teachings, into their classroom. And so I asked them 2 questions, one that has to do with their level of understanding, how well they understand IoT concepts. And the other question is, what have they been using in terms of Internet of Things tools? So I just want to here highlight or share with you that at least this shows 40 to 50%. They self-report that not at all, not well, or neutral. And maybe 50 to 60% they say they know these concepts well or very well. But these are general concepts, and I feel that if we go a little bit more detail about them, they don't necessarily have a good grasp or understanding on those concepts. And this is reflected in this question, where I presented them with many different IoT tools that are very important to use them in terms of their integration into the classroom as part of the pedagogy, because my focus is how can we use all these in a pedagogical framework, in a sound pedagogical framework, closed loop, complete pedagogical framework. And we noticed that many of them have not used it. So if we sum the sometimes, rarely, and never, we find out that many of those of the professors or teachers, and my sample is small, I will tell you now, it's close to 30. And of course, it has to be more broad, but it was just a pilot. I needed to just to dip in the waters and see what directions we're looking at. And so I noticed that very few are using those tools for themselves, even, not even in educational context. So tomorrow's educational system, ecosystem, will look like that, using the Internet of intelligence of things. Energy management and climate control to control the classroom. I mean, a hot classroom definitely is not conducive for learning. I've experienced it. I'm sure a lot of teachers have experienced that as well. Time spent in classroom and online for students, for example, where they can use different AI tools to measure things such as performance effectiveness for the students or learning effectiveness and so on. Interaction with classmates and matching for group work, program personalization and optimization, location tracking on school premises for safety and emergency, access to smartphone sensors while on campus for security purposes, access smartwatch sensors for health purposes, classroom participation, engagement, and attention, matching professor to students in many different ways, graduate studies or versus undergraduate, where you have different professors with different teaching styles and different students teaching the same and wanting to take the same course, and learning process optimization and personalization. Some of these issues were discussed today and in other presentations. And what the future professor will have to deal with. As a professor, I feel that I need to understand those things if I am to integrate technology or Internet of Things with artificial intelligence. I need to understand all those dimensions. I need to understand what do they involve and what are the factors, so I can be able to design and so I can be able to put together some pedagogy that will produce the learning that, as a designer, I am intending to produce with the students. And then I would know what tools to use and how to use them. And I think Linda even gave an example about using a ChatGPT in a pedagogical framework. That was a perfect example that she made. So the present and future, and here's a little bit of fun where forgive me, this is just my assessment. I don't have hard evidence about that, but the way things are going, I feel that the world, the global economy, there's a global economy and hesitancy and caution. The global economy is sort of meeting a lot of challenges today. And there's an increased interest in global governance, especially when it comes to technology and the digital economy. Everybody's trying to figure out how to manage all this AI data, or all these digital learning platforms data generated, everything that's going on, it's just crazy out there. And all countries, institutions, organizations are trying to put some level of control, some level of measures, might I dare say some level of sanity to it. To us, to me, as an educator, I feel this is very good for the educational sector, because it's an opportunity for us to have open borders for knowledge acquisition and cross-cultural interaction. So I see us using today's technology, today's Internet of Things, where the entire the entire set of universities across the world is the global campus, and not just a small network of universities together. Access to all those universities and their courses and their knowledge in a cross-cultural setting, international setting. I think this is the opportunity. Looking at the growth of data, which was about 9% since 2008 in terms of online adoption, I sort of made a small little map here showing that by 2030, 100% of all the educational system will be online, which I don't think it's realistic. There's always going to be some face-to-face classes, but the question, what kind of form or shape will that take? Well, we're looking here at a typical diffusion of innovation problem, where you have early adopters, you have the innovators, you have the early adopters, then you have the early majority, followed by the late majority, and then the laggards. And so if you take cumulatively, you end up with a typical S-shaped curve. And I feel that this is where COVID-19 hit. When it comes to online learning, I think we were really at the beginning. There was a lot of activities, but institutions prior to COVID, they varied a lot across the world in terms of their progress with online education. But it was a great variation, and many were not ready. This is why they were hit very hard with the COVID-19, where they were forced to go completely digital. And then the digital strategy and governance, I feel, will once this is takes shape and it's better understood globally, this is where the inflection point will start to occur, and sort of the acceleration of adoption will decrease, and it will sort of taper up with around two-thirds of the educational institutions and programs would have an option of online at least. And I believe that at that time here, once we are at this level, I feel that there will be another paradigm shift, and in terms of acceptance of way different methods of education and acceptance for different degrees and certificates and so on. There will be a major change there. So from my perspective, what do we do today? What do we need to do today? I feel that today we need to make every institution needs to make an assessment of infrastructure and capabilities, followed by establishing a digital instructional strategy. This digital instruction strategy should map from the entire organization all the way to its infrastructure for technology integration, support for professors, and education for professors all the time, which goes into building capacity, because professors, I feel that, will need to deal with technology and more of it as time passes by, and try to use different ways on putting it as part of the pedagogy. We should not emphasize the technology, we should emphasize the pedagogy, and the discussion should be about the pedagogy and not the technology. And finally, create an area for innovation for professors and instructional designers and all stakeholders to innovate different ways of teaching, to continue that innovation stream and foster an environment of innovation. So there's always major impacts, major opportunities. I think I'm missing some slides here. Let me check. Did I miss anything? No. So some of those disruptions, of course, that are occurring, there's major disruptions for the sustainability of institutions. Just because of the Internet of Things, because of artificial intelligence, all this just made the life of the institution just the more complex. I've had many issues and many meetings related to what do you do with the data and what do you allow in the classroom, what would you allow professors to use in terms of students interacting with third-party systems on the website and so on and so forth. And at that time, we were talking about using Facebook for learning. And many students have found many different ways to use Facebook effectively for learning. Organizational requirements for higher education. I feel that there's a shift. Organizations, they have to adapt for a different ecosystem where technology is the major driver for their work. And then I believe that there will be an independence of organizations from higher education. More and more companies like Google and Microsoft are starting to create their own courses and programs, and they're telling students, we don't need a university degree. Come take our program and we give you a job right after you finish it. The professor roles, there's a shift. The biggest one that affects us is a shift in the roles for professors. We need to become more and more multidisciplinary. I feel we need to understand more about technology. I mean, you could be a specialist in economics or some other area in the arts and sciences, mathematics, but now you need to become knowledgeable in technology, and not just superficial knowledge, but you need to have a certain reasonable depth of technology, data analytics, and so on, no matter what discipline you are. All this is part of it. You need to have some international sensitivity because eventually we're dealing with a global environment. Technology use as innovator, apply yourself to use more and more technology. So that's investment. Are you going to pay your own money to go and continue buying technology and playing with it and so on and so forth? And innovative assessment, moving away from cheating. This is very important. I feel that with the technology, we have opportunities to move away from trying to stop students from cheating and forget about the concept of cheating, but find ulterior ways of the traditional classical method of summative assessment, innovative ways to assess students' actual learning. Did they actually learn or not? And that's what's important in the end. I've had many students who would come to the exams with anxieties, and even though they know their subject matter very well, but when they come to the exam, they are anxious and they don't do well. So we need to move away from this cheating and manage a student's emotions, which is a very lacking area in terms of research and managing students' anxieties. And believe it or not, there's still a lot of students today when it comes to learning that they are anxious to use technology. More categories of professors to accommodate shifting roles. I believe our roles as professors, the traditional role, is going to change. There will be different categories of professors to fill up different roles and needs within the institution. And finally, there will be different student learning product needs. I mean, right now, we always feel that the classroom is going to meet the requirements or the needs of all the students. But in fact, we might end up with having to have different methods, different goals for different students. I made a pilot manually to do that in a face-to-face classroom, but it was very difficult to manage manually. But it was a great idea. Students loved it, where they would be part of designing their own class pedagogy and class goals and so on, and what they want as outcomes. But of course there were challenges, but I think technology can help support things that are of that nature. personalization, customization really imply that we have to go to that level of changing the paradigm. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rafat, for your presentation. Wonderful presentation. Really thought-provoking items picked up today. Let me follow up from one of the last items you raised regarding the overall academics shifting their role in using technologies as innovators. And it's one of the items we discussed previously with Linda and team. Should the universities and academics follow towards the same direction for students as well, so that we can build and boost upon students' digital capabilities at the same time, so that we can utilize AI, smart campus technologies, etc.?
Absolutely. The short answer is absolutely. The long answer is newer and newer generations are being born into the technology. So they get born, the first gift they buy them is an iPhone or an Android or whatever it is. And so they're comfortable with technology, being around technology. Where they're lacking is to using it effectively for their own learning. So they don't know how to do that. They're using it based on the media and whatever other purposes there are in the real world. So as educators, as institutions, this is why there's that figure I put on digital strategy and instructional strategy. When a student starts with us and they go through a 3-year program, I'm just throwing here numbers. They start with us where they have used their iPhone, let's say, or 3 apps for learning. By the time they come out, they would have used 75 apps for their learning by the time they graduate from our programs. But the issue is not the apps. That's what I'm trying to say, is that we should not focus on the app. We should focus on the pedagogy within the app. So to us as institutions and pedagogues, we really need to think of whatever technology, how it can be used pedagogically, in a safe way, in a safe environment for students, and stop worrying about the app. Like, we don't need to worry about students using the app to cheat. We have to forget about cheating and actually figure out how we can assess proper learning and measure that using that app.
And perhaps can this be achieved? And I'm following up from a comment in the email part. Perhaps this can be achieved by optimizing objectives, learning objectives on a personalized level based on each student's capabilities, so that it's aligned on pedagogical practices, PBL, peer instruction, if I'm reading between the lines.
One of the processes I like, and I got training for 15 years ago and was involved, is, let's say, what they use in business schools, the AACSB accreditation for continuous improvement. That opens a whole new door that allows you to innovate based on that foundation of what they have in place. And absolutely, the concept of identifying learning goals and measuring them and being able to accommodate your content and continuous improving is a way to go. But then the devil is in the details. The difficulty, I was part of the committees at the undergraduate, master's, and PhD level for creating those goals at an institutional level, and for all the entire AACSB, and trying to identify a goal or ask a professor to identify a learning goal for their course was very, very difficult, because professors are not trained in that way. They're trained for subject matter. They're not trained for educational matter, educational processes. So we get our PhDs, or we get specialization expertise in a certain area. We come, we teach that area, but we don't know how to develop a pedagogy around our subject matter based on the clientele that we have, based on the group of students that we have, and integrating that with things such as Bloom taxonomy and so on and so forth, talking about different methods to that effect. So yes, it is the right way to do it, but this building capacity is very, very important that the institution should be responsible for.
So you also mentioned about boosting and enhancing experiential learning. How do we design technology enhanced experiential learning by utilizing AI perhaps, and any challenges on that, I assume?
AI has a lot of opportunities, but we cannot just throw AI into whatever we want to do. I'm not saying we cannot do it. We definitely can do it. But first of all, I think a discussion on the fundamental level needs to occur. For example, experiential learning, ask 10 people and they will tell you 10 different things how they perceive experiential learning. So we need to come to consensus. And there might be different perspectives, and that's okay. But as an institution, when you have your own digital strategy and pedagogical strategy, then you as an institution can frame and scope what experiential learning for us means. These are the elements and the components, and these are the tools that we have to operationalize it. And this is how you train the professors and so on to use it and integrate into their classroom. But that discussion needs to occur first. It's very important. Can we use AI? Absolutely. But then who's going to develop the AI? Are you going to retrofit AI that already exists in the market? Okay, so you take a third-party AI, and then how do you know what's in the black box? What are they doing with the data? So now you have a lot of technological issues as an institution you are responsible for as well to know. Do you develop it in-house? So you ended up with that discussion, and so on and so forth. So this is why that schema that I put is something we cannot avoid. As an institution, you need to deal with all the elements in there. As a learning part, you have your digital strategy and your pedagogical strategy that needs to be established. And that is limited by the infrastructure as well. If you don't have the infrastructure, the digital infrastructure to support your digital pedagogical strategy, then they're all interconnected.
Very true. Very true. And a last question I'm picking up now is that you discussed about moving towards more online delivery of programs, schools, etc. At the other end of the spectrum, we've got collaborative learning. We've got new technologies such as immersive learning, AR, VR, which are most of the time used in a campus-based mode. How do we combine this if we're moving towards a more online mode? So we've got technology that we need and we want to utilize it, but at the same time we're moving towards a more online rather than a campus-based blended learning scheme.
Absolutely. I mean, I might look old and from old generation, and I don't like technology. I love technology. I'm just critical about it. I just want us to do it right rather than just jumping in it for fun. So I've been doing online learning since 1996. So my first article on it was in 2003, playing around with different methods of using quizzing systems for learning and for assessment. So technology can go all the way to augmented reality, virtual reality, all sorts of artificial intelligence integration, and so on and so forth. So will it be used? Absolutely. Putting cost of adoption and integration aside, it definitely brings a lot of opportunities to do that. It definitely brings added value and enhanced for learning. But the bottom line, you need still a designer, and the professor has to be multidisciplinary to know how to design the pedagogy around, let's say, a VR tool. To me, having a VR tool to walk around, getting into the classroom doesn't give value. So you have to ask yourself, it's like when they started with online learning in institutions, all they would do is put video of lectures and then questions at the end of the video, or maybe a discussion. So what's the value? I would ask them, what's the value of me sitting and talking to a screen for half an hour with my head versus just my voice, right? So, or just the text. So what's the value? So I'm not saying there's one is better than the other one or worse. I'm just saying that we need to ask those questions. And if there's no value, or the value is small for the head, then for the video, then maybe we should consider something different in terms of video. So these are the questions that I have. We have experimented with actual lectures where the professor is standing and writing on the board. We've done a lot of experimentation of those. I have even tried experimenting with videos versus sound pods, like small lectures by voice only, and so on and so forth, versus text. So collaborative learning, to get back to your question, because you're asking about using collaborative learning, there's a very workable pedagogy and very old pedagogy where you play games collaboratively. You create actual, real, experiential collaborative scenarios, like a courtroom where you have the setting. For example, it could be a proposal of your project to a committee because you want funding for it. It could be any scenario where it has an actual setting that is important. That setting is important. And the context includes people for it and people against it. With those kind of elements in place, you have a great scenario for collaboration, experiential, and VR to be in place, where you don't have to be physically there. You put the VR anywhere you are in the world, and then you just connect, and you have that environment simulated for you there. And then in there, you can have participants from industry, from academia, from peers. It really doesn't matter. You can have audience who can interact, and so on and so forth in a VR scenario. So absolutely, I could find these. But the question is always about accessibility to this technology. I mean, we're always thinking that, okay, in Europe, North America, we're pretty fortunate. We have access to a lot of things. We can always get funding, but the rest of the world does not. And I'm always thinking in terms of global environment. I feel we have an opportunity to be able, using the technology and our pedagogies, to expand them to the rest of the world, to reach all the way around the world to other people who don't have easy access to it, and make a larger impact for us and for the rest of us.
Thank you again, Rafat. Lovely to welcome you here today.
Thank you, Adonis.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
So that is the closing of our speeches and talks today. I would like to thank you all for joining us for this informative, for this engaging webinar on the future of education. We hope that you have found the presentations valuable, thought-provoking. And we believe that the webinar and all the talks have made it clear that digital education has the potential to revolutionize the way we learn by making education more accessible, more interactive, and personalized. We also saw that the importance of considering the potential challenges, ensuring technology is used in a way that best serves the needs of each student. So we encourage you to continue the conversation and perhaps share your thoughts and ideas with us. Once again, thank you for joining us, and we hope to meet you again in one of our upcoming events.